It's a new mimer. Okay, so does everyone have this other book that I give out, the one in Hebrew? Yeah. Okay, so what we learned yesterday was, first we learned about the fact that there's those who say that Hashem is primarily the one who controls and runs the world, but the stars and the constellations have some degree of independence, making independent choices, using the term, the wine belongs to the master, but the thank you goes to the waiter. Then we learned there's a worse kind of avodah zarah where they say, no, Hashem completely abandoned the world and he left the world for it to be run by the stars and the constellation, and Hashem himself has removed himself from the world. And in both of these cases, we can say both of these beliefs are included in what the Gemara says, that the nations of the world refer to Hashem as the God of all gods. Which means even those that say Hashem abandoned the world still admit that Hashem is the ultimate God. And Hashem is the one that gave them, even according to their mistaken belief that these gods have some independent power, but Hashem is the one that gave it to them. They believe that. On the other hand, even those that believe that Hashem is primarily in charge, and all we're doing is saying thank you because they have some degree of independence, is also avodah zarah. Then we go into the reasons. So what's the difference between with the Yidden and the nations of the world? And the nations of the world choose the ministers, and the Yidden choose Hashem, the king. So first, on the surface level, the answer is because when you look at things from the outside, it looks like all these intermediaries, they're really responsible for things that are happening. Because we see clearly a relationship between the sun and what goes on in this world, the moon and what goes on in this world, the constellations, the stars. We see how it relates to things that are happening. So it looks like they're sort of in charge. And the Yidden, they have the wisdom and the insight. They're able to perceive the truth, not go by the way things look on the outside. And they see that Hashem is in charge, and all these intermediaries are only like the axe in the hand of the chopper. Then the Rebbe says there's a deeper explanation. Deeper. What's deeper? That's what we learned yesterday. The deeper explanation is it's not only that they don't recognize it, they recognize it also. But let's think of the mashal of the king and the ministers. And the reason why a person would say, I would rather choose a minister than a king is because I can get more benefits by cultivating a relationship with a minister more than the benefits I'll get by cultivating the relationship with the king. Yes, it's very prestigious to have a relationship with a king, but the benefits will come from the ministers who are actually in charge of the day-to-day runnings, and they're the ones who make the decision. So if I have certain needs, I can go to them and they'll help me. The king is not in charge of these things. So therefore, they choose the ministers because they get more benefits. The same could also be in the nimshal. And wait a second, and what about those who choose the king? Those who choose the king, what about them and the benefits? They say they're not interested in the benefits, they're interested in what's emes. And they'd rather have a relationship with the melech, with the king himself, because he's much greater and he's much higher and there's much more content and meaning to a relationship with the king than a relationship with ministers. So this is the difference. The first group is thinking about the benefits and they don't care so much about what's emes or what's deep or what's full of content and what's more meaningful. And the second group says, no, we choose that. And the smart person says, I choose what's more meaningful and what has more content and what has more depth. And that's the relationship with the king. So now he's going to apply that to Hashem and the Eden and the world. And that is that they believe that by being connected to the Avodah Zarah, they're going to have more sustenance in this world. And the Eden, they believe, even if you would have more sustenance, I'd rather have a relationship with Hashem, which is emes, than a relationship with something which is not true, even though I'll get more benefits and sustenance from that. But as we go into it a little bit deeper. So now let's look at page 206. If you're looking at the Hebrew edition, so we are in the middle of Ois Gimel. No, middle of Ois Daled. And it is the line that begins with the words Lavedes HaMelech. It's 3 lines from the bottom of the page, which says, well, Inyanu. There's actually a number 26 there for the footnote. That's exactly what we're up to in the Hebrew. It says number 26. Who deeper reason why the nations would rather get their sustenance from Klippa than to get it from Kedusha. Again, we learned before that the stars, the moons, the constellations, they have no free choice. They're in axe and hands of the chopper. But by worshiping them, they get chayas from Klippa. Klippa gives them sustenance. And they're going to get, or they'd rather get their sustenance from Klippa than to get it from Kedusha. Why? So the main reason why they worshipped the stars and the constellations, as it's explained in various Maimorim, in order to receive hashpah from Kedusha, a person has to have bittul. You might remember this from Tanya. One of the first things that we learn about in Tanya, Kedusha, godliness, is only found in a place where there's bittul. In other words, bittul means that I submit myself to Hashem, I submit my independence, and therefore I'm a vessel for godliness. But where there's no bittul, where I want to hold on to my own independent identity, in a sense which is separate from Hashem, I want that separateness. The separateness doesn't allow godliness to dwell on me. So therefore, in order to receive from Kedusha, one has to have bittul. And because they have no desire to be mevatel themselves, that's why they rather choose to worship the stars and the constellations, because to receive sustenance from Klippa, you don't need bittul. Only from Kedusha you need bittul. Okay, this is it says in Zohar, Durach Mesava, that the spirit of impurity is damin tamid tadir. It's always found in a place which is b'magona v'rekanya, a place that's free and it's empty. As it says, Asher neichel b'mitzrayim chinam. We just had this in the Parsha, that the Yidden said, we still remember the good food we ate in Egypt, and they added the words, we ate it for free. It was given to us. So there's a famous story with the Arizal, that he went to buy an esrog. And of course, the merchant who was selling the esrog was very honored that the Arizal is coming to him to buy an esrog. And he chooses a beautiful esrog, and then he takes out money to pay him. And he says, no, I don't want to take money from you. For me, this is more than money. It's the greatest honor and schus that I can provide you with an esrog. So the Arizal said, it says in the pasuk, Hashem neicha b'mitzrayim chinam, which means klippa, things which is not kedusha, that comes for free. Kedusha, you have to pay for. What it basically means, in a figurative way, it's really saying that in order to receive from kedusha, you have to give something up. You have to give something of yourself. In order to receive from klippa, it's not necessary. Klippa itself is separateness. It's separate from Hashem. So to receive from klippa, if I'm feeling separate, independent of Hashem, with klippa, you're at home. That's exactly what they are. They are a club of separateness. It's interesting, the Zohar, when he uses a term to describe klippa, klippa has a lot of different names. In Tanya, sometimes it's called sitra achra. Here it's called ruach misava, a spirit of impurity. One of the names for klippa is tura de pruda, separate mountains. In other words, when you look on the ground that's leveled, everything is one piece of land. But a mountain stands out separately. There's another mountain stands out separately. So mountains represent that separateness. First of all, it's high, it represents arrogance, and it represents the separateness. So he calls klippa separate mountains, which means not only is separateness and independence a feature of klippa, but in a sense, this is the definition of klippa. Klippa, by definition, is separate and independent of Hashem. And we said this many times, that's why it's called klippa. Klippa is not evil, klippa means a shell. The definition of a shell is something which is not transparent. Godliness is not transparent. It blocks godliness. There's a sense of separateness from godliness. So therefore, to receive from klippa, I don't have to have bittul. Klippa is not bittul and I'm not bittul. But to receive from kedusha, you have to have bittul. So when it says here that we ate in Egypt without paying for it, what it basically means is there's nothing we have to give up. Like there are a group of chassidim who are once talking amongst themselves. This is the Alter Rebbe's chassidim. Each one of the chassidim were talking about what is it that I had to give up to become a chassid. So in fact, there was one of the chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. He was one of the greatest. His name was Isaac Humler. He was such a great chassid that when the Alter Rebbe was nostalgic, there was actually a group of people that wanted to appoint him as the new Rebbe. And what happened was he actually was ready to accept. And he related the following story, that when the chassidim came to him that he should accept the position, he was ready to accept the position. So he sent a wagon and a driver to pick him up, to bring him to wherever they were supposed to go. And he said, as soon as I put my foot on the wagon to travel, to accept leadership, I felt that my mind was opened up and the gates of wisdom just came opening, and the wisdom of Torah just came pouring into my head. Why? Because when Yidden appoint someone as a leader, from above, they give him tremendous power. So he said, just before he even got there, he just put his foot on the wagon, he already felt the gates of wisdom opening up. But a second later, he said, I reminded myself, the Alter Rebbe once said to me, Isaac, don't ever become a Rebbe. And he took his foot off. And everything was gone. For a chassid, that's Mesiras Nefesh. The Mesiras Nefesh was that he saw the great benefits that he gets spiritually, but he gave it up. So he was a very big chassid. And he was great, not only in Chassidus, he was a giant and brilliant in Nigla and Halacha and Gemara. So when this group was talking, he said, Had he not spent so much time on learning Chassidus and Avodah Chassidus, spent all this time just learning Nigla, he could have been like the Shach and the Taz. Shach and the Taz are some of the greatest commentaries that we find on the Shulchan Aruch, that everything we do today is based on their teachings. And they lived a few generations before. But basically, he was saying, I had to give something up. Every chassid said something that they would have to have given up. So the giving up part, why? That's the bittul. It means there's something I have to give of myself. And that's what it means. Mitzrayim, you don't have to give anything up. It's for free. Ashpa meluma is the influence and sustenance that comes from the other side. It's another word for klipa. The other side, which is Mitzrayim, chinam, it comes without bittul. So that's the reason, that's a deeper reason why they would rather get hashpah from klipa than from kedusha, because then I don't have to have that bittul. Is bittul such a hard thing? Yes. I think we all know that. If you have some bittul, you know that bittul is a hard thing. Another reason, a second reason, why they wanted to get the hashpah from the constellations, meaning from klipa, rather to get the hashpah from kedusha, page 208. Actually, the sustenance that they would get from klipa is going to be much more than what they would have gotten from kedusha. Actually, this is one of the things that we see very often in this world, and one of the things that are very troubling and very disturbing and interferes very often with people's amunah, when you see that people are connected to klipa, and it looks like, wow, they're really having a lot of success. They're making a lot of money. They're rising to positions of power and other benefits. It says it's true that they see that the hashpah that they get from klipa is more than what they would get from kedusha. And what's the reason for that? Why is it taka that way? Being that klipa, how does it get its chayes from it? A level which is called Machiav, that's above the stalshlos, the order of the different worlds. When Hashem gives influence and sustenance from there, it's without calculations, again, figuratively speaking. And therefore, Hashpah b'ribi gadol. This needs to be explained. And the truth is, it's a very deep subject. It's also a very fundamental subject. If there's anyone that really would like to delve into it more, one of the places where it's found and explained really in depth and in detail is in a mimer called Kunter Samayim. So it happens that this is a mimer written by the Rebbe Rashab in very lot of detail. I think it's maybe one of, or the first mimer ever to be translated into English. And it's a very good translation. And it talks about this subject. Why is it that klipa seems to be having more bracha, it looks like bracha, more hashpah than kedusha? And the answer is that kedusha, we receive our chayes from pnimius. Klipa gets the chayes from makiv. These are the words, and now we need to explain that a little bit. That's so easy. Basically, there is a question. If everything comes from Hashem, how can Hashem give life and sustenance to wicked people, evil people, people that are, let's say, Mitzrayim? Look how evil they were, and look how powerful they were. They were rich. They had all the military power. Wisdom was in Mitzrayim. They were the superpower of the generation. They had black magic with which they did whatever they wanted to. And yet they were most evil people. It says Ervas Haaretz, which means that in terms of spirituality, this was the most corrupt, the most impure place in the whole world. And yet look how much sustenance they got. So first of all, how come they get all together? Second of all, how does it make sense they should even get more? And very often we find this with Yidden who decide, let's say, not to keep Shabbos, and they open their business on Shabbos, and they actually make a lot of money. Or people decide not to give tzedakah, and actually, as a result of that, they save themselves much more money, and they have a lot of money. And it turns out the person who's giving tzedakah is not making so much money. How does all that make sense? So generally speaking, we see that hashpah in huge amounts is found more on the side of klipa than the side of kedusha. So the answer is because klipa gets chayes from Machiav, and kedusha gets chayes from pnimius. But I have to explain it. What does that mean? So how do we explain it in a way that we're not going to make it more complicated? So the definition of Machiav means something which is external, on the outside, and pnimius means something which is on the inside. So let me give a mashal. And also we'll get to the terms later. You'll see later there's a term called chitzonius haratzon, an external desire, and this pnimius haratzon, internal desire. Anyone familiar with that? Did anyone remember having that anywhere in a Maimer, in Tanya? What would you say is the difference?
The previous haratzon is the actual true desire that's only relates to itself.
And chitzonius haratzon?
Chitzonius is kind of how it relates to others.
You're on the right track, but there's a little bit more to it. This is the classical mashal that's given, and from there it'll help us understand it better. Classical mashal is a person goes to work, and he works for many hours, and he works hard labor. Let's say he's schlepping rocks, he's working construction. His job is to schlep rocks from one place and load them onto a truck to another place, working hard. At the end of the day, he's exhausted, he's tired, and he gets his salary at the end of the week. And you ask this person, do you really want to work so hard? What if the boss says to him, would you mind if I would pay you a salary without all doing this work? Would you have a problem? Most people I know would not have a problem. So that means he doesn't really want the work. What he wants is the money. In fact, if he would be able to get the money without doing this hard work, he would take the opportunity, he would grab it. On the other hand, if someone else would come along and tell the boss, fire him and give me the job, and he does it, would he be upset or not? Why? He doesn't really want it. He doesn't want it. That's his livelihood. So does he want it or doesn't want it? So these are the terms in Chassidus. He wants it, but it's called chitzonius haratzon. Let's give it this definition. When you want something as a means to an end, that's the external desire. When you want the end in itself, that's the internal desire. So the desire for the work is a means to an end. I'm not talking a person that's working, let's say, by teaching children or doing this kind of work. Regular job, which you're doing in order to earn money. So the work and all the effort that goes into the work, you're doing it, and you're doing it willingly. Nobody's forcing you. But the desire is an external desire because it's a means to an end. The money is the end in itself. If you want, you can go a step further. Do you want the money or do you want the benefits of the money? I once saw a sign in an office that said like this: I don't want to be a millionaire. I just want to live like a millionaire. Which means if you would have all the benefits of a millionaire without money in the bank, just have a card in your hand, and wherever you want, you can buy. Wherever you want to go, you can go. Any hotel you want to go, you can go to. You can buy any piece of real estate. You don't have to have the money. You want the benefits of the money. So in a sense, the money itself is only a means to an end. For a Yid, we would go a step further and say, and all that, why do I want it? So I could serve Hashem properly. That's why I'm here. That I should serve Hashem properly. So I want to be able to have a home, have clothing, have food, be comfortable, so I could serve Hashem. So the desire for all the gashmistic things is a means to an end for serving Hashem. And why do I want to serve Hashem? Some people say, because I'll get more olam haba, I'll get more reward, but that's also external desire. The real reason is because that's the truth. Hashem, that's why He created me, and that's what He wants from me, and that's why I want to serve Hashem, because Hashem is Hashem. So what I'm basically saying is, when you talk about external desire, internal desire, there could be many levels in that. But this is the principle. When you want something as a means to an end, it's an external desire. Now, the external desire could sometimes be things that you don't really want. It goes against your will. For example, if a person, God forbid, has some sort of a infection, something happened, and because of that, they have to do an operation. And he goes to a doctor, and he asks the doctor to do that, to cut his skin or whatever it is. That's something painful. Why is he asking for it? That means he wants it. Not only he wants it, he's paying the doctor money to do it. He doesn't really want that pain. He wants it because this will save his life. So it's a means to an end. So therefore, we can see that people could want things and want it very strongly, but it's not, it could be against their nature. It's something which they really don't want, but they want it as a means to an end. And that's called chitzenius haratzon. So for example, Hashem created, not example, this is the idea. Hashem created evil in the world. Hashem doesn't want evil. But obviously He created it so there should be free choice. We should make the world into a dwelling place, which means, does Hashem want it or not? Yes, but it's chitzenius haratzon, it's an external desire. He wants it as a means to an end. And as a result of that, it could be wanting something which goes totally against what Hashem really wants, which is the end in itself, which is kedusha, holiness, godliness, refinement, and goodness, and so on. So that's what it means that Klippa, they get their sustenance from the external desire of Hashem. That's called Machiav. Machiav is something which encompasses from the outside. It's external. And because it's external, then Hashem could want something which is not necessarily what He really desires. And that's why Klippa can get their chayes. That's number one. But to relate it more, what it says in the Maimer is that the external desire of Hashem is also a level which is, it's where the infinite is. Finite is where things are calculated, measured, everything is in order, and this, for example, is a vessel for chokhmah, this is a vessel for bina, this is a vessel for das. Everything is in the right place where it's supposed to be. The light of Hashem, which is infinite, is like the light of the sun. It doesn't connect internally. It could shine on a heap of garbage. It could shine on a heap of diamonds. It could shine on people. It could shine on animals. It could shine on a field. It could shine in a palace. It's all the same. It makes no difference. Something which is external, it relates to everything in a sense equally. So therefore, what he's saying is that the sustenance that Klippa gets, which comes from the external desire of Hashem, Machiav, it's things are not measured and things are not calculated. There's nothing else to not calculate, chas v'shalom. It means the way it's delivered in this world is as if it was not calculated, as if it's not, there's no measurement, there's no calculation, there's no evaluation. Just Hashem gives the light, like the sun shines its light, and whatever happens, happens. So therefore, Klippa could be getting a lot of sustenance, because it's not related in a sense to what they do, what they don't do. But when Hashem gives us sustenance from His pnimius, that's something which is calculated, measured, evaluated, assessed. How much are you worth? How much do you deserve? How much will you get? It's like saying, how much water can I put in the cup? I take a look at the size, how big the cup is, how strong the cup is. Could it hold hot water? Could it hold cold water? Could this basket hold apples? Could it also hold little things, or is it going to fall through the holes? Everything is measured. Spiritually, we are being measured how much sustenance we can get. If you measure it, then things come in a limited way. If there's no measurement, things come in an unlimited way. So we see that by Klippa, things come in abundance. And that's another reason why the nations of the world choose to get their hashpah from Klippa, because from there they get things in abundance. And again, you have to repeat, Chas v'sholom, it doesn't mean that there's no calculation and there's no reason and there's no sort of plan. Everything is planned by Hashem. It just means like everything else in Torah, which is a metaphor. It comes in a way as if it's coming without measurement, without calculation, and without anything that, without relating to the details. So therefore, a person could be doing an Aveira. One second. The person could be doing an Aveira and doing a lot of Aveiras, and they're still getting sustenance. It's like the person who is doing something to himself which goes against his will, against his desire. He's cutting into his skin because there's a means to the end. And that's the way it is with Klippa. So again, Klippa gets sustenance from Hashem without measurement, without calculation. And therefore it comes in abundance. So now we go a step further, that a Yid chooses Hashem, even though there's, in a certain sense, two disadvantages. Number one, it requires bittul. Number two, you're going to get only what you deserve according to your vessel. So you're going to get less. And yet the Yid says, I'm ready to give all that up because I want a relation with Hashem himself. Yeah?
You said Klippa gets its measurement from Hashem without, gets like its energy from Hashem without measurement. Can you explain the measurement?
The measurement part means that everything is measured according to its capacity, just like begashmius. When a person is teaching students, so what I'm giving the students is intellect. Intellect is something which a person absorbs internally, and therefore each student will be given something which is according to their capacity. If they're younger, you have to speak one way. If they're older, another way. If they're knowledgeable, one way. If they're a scholar, another way. And everybody will have to be related, that you communicate to that person what they could receive, what they could accept. And that's what it means, measurement, that a person learns Torah, does mitzvahs, we do positive things, we do other things. So everything Hashem gives us is according to our actions and according to what our shlichus is all about in a very deep way. So therefore, it's measured according to what we need to do. That's what it means that it's measured, that it's evaluated and it's given to us according to what we can handle. But Klippa, there's no such thing as what it can handle because it's coming as if it's without measurement, without calculation, just something from the outside. And like I said, when the sun shines and the light of the sun doesn't relate in an internal way to anything, it doesn't relate to that when the sun shines. So therefore, it could shine on garbage, on diamonds, on a palace, on a field, in a cave, in the jungle, everywhere the same. It makes no difference. That means there's no measurement. It doesn't take in consideration who the recipient is. But when there's something pneumius, like you're teaching something, or you take in consideration, you're feeding food. So an infant, you feed food a little bit. A child, you feed more. An adult eats more. And also the adult depends on what they could handle, what they can't handle. Do they have any allergies? What's their condition? Everything is measured according to what their capacity is. And the same thing is spiritually. Is it clear? Did I clear it up or make it more confusing? Any questions? It's still hard after all the explanations, and I still don't get it. How can Hashem give them so much more than someone who's keeping Shabbos and keeping kosher and doing mitzvahs? That's an emotional question. But the logic behind it is this. It's something which is not simple. We'll have more of it in the Maimer. But it basically means that Machiav is something infinite. It doesn't relate to the recipient and to the capacity of the recipient. Of course, it's on the outside. And if that's the case, anyone could receive. A heap of garbage could get sunlight, just like the king's palace. But you didn't get pnimis. Hashem gives us his sustenance in a way that it penetrates deep inside and it's internalized. And therefore, we can only take in what we are capable of taking in. And that means everything. food, clothing, everything is God's sustenance given to us, and it's given to us in a way that we could receive it. Yes.
Those people, or like originally, it sounds like they were very intelligent and they knew God was really God, and so why is it considered a Torah? Because they knew they're worshiping God, but they know that, but then they get their good stuff from.
Well, the mere fact that they're relating to Klippa as if they have some independent, really, Klippa doesn't have independent power either. Hashem is the one that gives them this abundance through the channel of Klippa. But in their minds, as if these angels, which are Klippa, they have power, and we're going to worship them, bow to them, and as a result of that, they're going to give us more. But they don't realize that whole thing is one big fabrication. They don't have anything. It's Hashem doing it through the Klippa. Obviously not. Why not? Because on the surface, it does look like there are other forces that are in charge. Again, remember we said this many times in class, even people who study Torah and they learn about different angels that do different things, and you learn about dialogues between the angels and Hashem and the angels and Moshe or Abraham, it appears as if they have some sort of independent power. It only appears that way, but in reality, angels cannot do anything themselves. They're just shluchim of Hashem. They're just instruments and tools of Hashem. But in their minds, it looks so much as if they have independent power, that this is to them, it appears like, okay, if I'll be nice to them and I'll worship them, they'll give me more. Of course, the obvious question here, which we'll go into the Maimon later, wait a second, if I get more, then why not? What do I care where it's coming from? $100 is $100. $1 million is $1 million. And we see, by the way, in the world, most of the people that are the millionaires, the billionaires, they're not the people who are the most refined, benevolent people, or people who are doing Torah mitzvahs. In fact, the closer you are into the world of Kedusha, the less you see this abundance. The further out in the world of Klippa, you see more of it. So, this is the explanation, at least part of it. Move on. Let's do a few more lines. From this, it's understood. Goydel hashvach va'pichus Yisrael. From this, we can understand the great wisdom of Yidden. Sheinan oidem. They say we only worship HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no one else. Which means Agam b'vdei lekabel mekdusha tzarich la'avoda v'yagia. To receive for kedusha, person has to work hard, has to be labor. Why? Because labor, working hard, is an expression of bittul. I have to give up something of myself. Agam oz, and even then, which working hard to receive sustenance from Hashem, and that hard work is the bittul, to discipline myself in my thought, in my speech, in my action. I have to work hard at studying Torah. Even then, what I get from Hashem is limited. The medida v'agbola, it's measured and limited. Lefi midas ha'avoda, according to the degree and as much avoda that I do. Nevertheless, what do you even say? They say we're willing to forego and give up all this abundance of material prosperity. I give it up. I don't care. All I want is my relationship with Hashem. 2:10. We know that Yidden can also do the same thing, do an Aveira or Averis, and when they do that, they'll actually start seeing more success in their life than before, dafka because they do Averis. There's such a pasuk. And the fact that Maimon that I mentioned, Kurtus Hamayim, is based on the pasuk, Shalom Yiyah Li, Ki B'Shrirus Li B'Elech. I'm going to have peace and I'm going to have abundance because I'm going to do what I want. Which means when the person chooses Klippa, they're suddenly going to see that they're getting abundant. It doesn't work that way. Right? A person stops, keeps the store open on Shabbos, all of a sudden they lose all their money. No, there would be no free choice left. It works the other way around. The person starts doing things negative and he sees success. Not only could he continue to see success, but I'll leave these words for a moment, not go into it, so we can continue with the flow. So Yid can also do that. Yid says no. We give all this up. I'd rather not. Why not? Because what's important to me and what I cherish and what's precious to me is a hashpa yeshem etzumtzemes. I'd rather get more limited sustenance. I'd rather get the sustenance through working hard and bittul, but it comes from kedusha, from holiness, from Hashem. Okay, chew it over and to be continued.
Rabbi Majeski?
Yes.
Hi. What's the name of the Ma'amar that you talk about?
The name of the mimer is Yoim Ashte Asar.